So today we are going to talk about some more stuff around data models in Django. So we were specifically going to talk about validators and associations. So validators, can someone tell me what they think validators are or how we're going to be using them? Or let me ask a better question. So validators and associations are concepts that are kind of similar to something that we saw in SQL. So if we remember last Friday, what were we talking about last Friday with SQL? We did the school example.
Probably something to help ensure that you have good referential integrity and all fields that should be filled out are filled out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is exactly why we want to use validators. So what gives us that in SQL?
Constraints and data types.
Yep. So constraints are kind of going to, validators for us today are going to be kind of a way of us constraining the data that is going to be going into our database. And then the associations are the relationships. So relationships. And this is going to be, how do I make a one-to-one relationship? How do I make a one-to-many, many-to-many? Okay. So we're going to start off as usual by creating our application. So I have a virtual environment that is already set up and activated. So I'm going to start my project. I'm going to call this school project. Okay. And then I'm going to go into my school project. I am going to run start app. And I'm going to call it school app just for simplicity. Okay, so now we have our project. Also, I wanted to show you guys a command since we're talking about like new features today. So you can run your start project with a dot at the end, which means that it will put everything that usually goes into this higher level folder in whatever folder you're in. So it won't do any nested folder stuff. So if I hit enter here, it's going to create, oh, it doesn't work for this one because I have the same name. I'm just going to call this test. Test project. Okay, so what it did was it created just the inside folder and the manage.py. So everything inside of this folder, it creates it wherever you are in your directory instead of inside of a folder that's called the same name as the project. I just wanted to show that. I'm going to delete these. Also the manage.py. Okay. So basically anything that's contained in here, if you put the dot, it will just not have that higher level project folder with the same name. So if you don't want it, you can use that. All right. Clear. I need to do quick setup. I need to add my app real quick. So, school app. And then I have to scroll down to, so remember, you guys were asking like, how does Django know that the templates are in a folder called templates? This is the code that specifies that. Okay, so here I'm gonna change my database to PostgreSQL. And then I'm gonna give it the name of my database, which is SchoolDB. Speaking of that, we have to create that school database. So I'm going to, just in case, I think I have one already. I'm gonna drop it, and then I'm gonna create it. Create DB, SchoolDB. Awesome. And if I do pSQL SchoolDB, I should be able to, okay, awesome, it worked. But, okay. So I've set up my database. I think that's all for now. This is all I need to set up today. Okay. So we created our app, we added all of our information. So typically when you're starting up your project and you're working on creating your database and you want to create your models, there are a few steps that you can take. So we usually create our models. We can add validation, which we will today. We make the migrations, we migrate, and then we can test. We can test whether everything worked out. So today we're going to show a few different ways of testing too. Okay. So let's start by creating some models here. So from our last, from Friday's review, we did like a school database. So let's try to recreate it today in Django. So I'm gonna try creating a locker class, and this will inherit from models.model. And then in here, I want a locker number, and this locker number can be an integer field. And I'm trying to remember, but I believe I wanted this locker number to be unique. So I'm going to set a constraint that says unique is true. So there are a lot of built-in constraints for our model attributes. So as a given, all of them are not null. So if you want something to be allowed to be null, you have to allow it specifically. So you would have to say, if you want to allow it to be true, you can say blank. Sorry, if you want to allow it to be blank, you could say blank equals true. You could also say null equals true. I forgot I think it's just null. But yeah, so unique is also one of these attributes that you can set that will constrain it to be unique. And then the second one was going to be a combination. So for this combination, let's make it a char field. Let's say the max length. The max length here is also a type of constraint. Max length equals 10. I need to figure out the autocomplete for these. These are really annoying. Okay. So let's say for our combination, this is all that we're going to add right now. But what happens if we put combinations in a format that we don't like? So we kind of want to handle that. We could add maybe when we're taking in user input from the interface, we can have a specific specific validation that only allows you to input specific format. But you typically in a system, you want multiple ways of validation. So you want validation on the front end, you also want validation on the back end. So here, when I want to put a combination in, or when I want to create a new locker, I want this combination to adhere to a specific format. So Django comes with certain validators built in. So we can say from Django.core import validators. So you can do this. You could also say from Django.core.validators import star, or you can just import specifically the ones that you want. I am gonna do this, import validators, just so we can as V. Okay. So how do I add a validator to this combination? Let's say, or actually let's add a validator for the locker number. Let's say I want this locker number to be greater than 100. So any number above 100 will work. So the attribute in our model fields that allows us to add validators is called validators, and this validators attribute is going to be a list. So you send in a list, and then you can have your validators separated by commas. So these are basically functions that will run against this locker number when it's going to be inputted into the database. I will mention how it gets run in a bit. So let's say, so validators or V dot, there's a few validators. There's file extension validator, there's an email validator. This one checks that there is an @ and a domain, so like dot something. There's also max value, max length, minimum value. For now, it also has a regex validator. For now, I'm just going to choose this minimum value validator. And all I have to do is put the number that I want as the minimum. So let's say my minimum is 100. And now I've added a validator to
Zainab, are you able to use more than one of those at one time, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it's a list. So if you wanted to validate the minimum value of this and something else, so you can just add V dot, maybe email. I know that doesn't make sense for this one. But yeah, so you can use them, you can use multiple.
Can you build your own validators?
Yes, and that is what we're going to do right now. Okay, so for this combination, it's a little more, it needs a little more work for validating. Let's say we want to use regex to detect a certain pattern and do a few things. So we are going to be creating our own validator. So like I said, all the files here are just Python files. So you can add more files and it won't break anything. So I'm going to add a validators, that's no caps, a validators file, and that will hold my validators. And as long as I'm importing them into where they're going to be used, again, I can put them wherever I want. This is just for organizational purposes. Okay, so in this validators file, I'm going to write a validator to validate locker combination. And it will take in the combination. Okay. So I have one that is written. We haven't really covered regex, but I will explain what this piece of regex will be doing. So regex, which we haven't really gone over, but you guys have heard of probably, is a way to detect patterns in strings. So I can specify a pattern. So I'm saying that this one is a regex pattern. I want three groups of numbers. Okay, so three groups here, with a dash in between them. And then this one, each group is going to be a decimal or an int, like a number. And it could have either one or two, one or two places. So it can be like 1 through 9, or it can be 10 through 99. So that this is my pattern for my combination, and that is the only thing that I want to allow. So I'm going to say, I'm going to see if this matches, if my combination matches this pattern. So the way to do that is, so RE is the regex library. I'm going to search whether this pattern matches the combination, or if the combination matches the pattern. Okay. So this match is going to be like a true or false value, pretty much. And so if not match, I want to say, I want to raise an error. Okay, so we haven't, I don't think we've covered much about raising an error. We've dealt with catching an error using try catch, right? Or try except. So try except this, and anything that you can try here, any errors that come up, this will catch it. So you can also specify what types of errors. There are many types. In Django, we have a type of error called a validation error, and that is what we are going to be raising. So in the same way that you can catch an error, you can also raise an error. So when you're writing your program and you get to a point where you're like, okay, this should raise a very specific error, there are types of errors that you can just use instead of, so this will mark it as a validation error type. So I'm going to do this. So I'm going to raise a validation error, and I'm going to send in a string. I'm going to be checking for the string later, so I'm just going to copy it over. And I just want to say that I have invalid combination format. I think that's pretty simple.
So is match giving you a true or false, or what is match?
Match is going to be a true or false.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've written a validator, and then in here, I'm going back to my models.py, and I'm going to import or from .validators, which is the file that I just created, right? That I put my validator in. I'm going to say from .validators, import, I forgot what I called it. Validate locker, okay. Validate locker combination. And now that I have it here, I can set it as a validator here. So validators. And here I'm just going to send in the validate locker combination as a validator for my combination here. Okay. Let's test it out. So right now we wrote our one model. I'm going to make sure I'm in my school project. I'm going to call the manage.py or run the manage.py with I make migrations. Okay, and then I'm going to migrate. Okay, so we have our table was created down here. So our school app initial migration file has run. So hopefully that means that we should be able to see. So here, school app locker. So it has created a table with the same name as my model. Yeah, Zach.
Yeah, so I had a question on the validators. So the function validators itself, that field is a function. And I see that, like, in validators.py, we created a function that takes in combination argument. So when you set a validators field in a attribute of that class, is it automatically taking that field as the argument? And is it possible to add more fields, or would you really need to do that?
I believe this is an example of where it has more fields because it's taking in an argument, which is going to be our minimum value. So you can actually inspect. So this is all just code that's written. So like this minimum value validator that is built in, you can press command and then click on it, or if you're on Windows, control and click, and you can see the information. You can see the data.
That's cool.
Base validator. So there's these. So it takes in self and then a limit value for the initializer. That's why we have to put something in. Versus, this is a specific type of validator. So yeah, you can see the code. Let's actually test this out. So something. Oh, we can't. Okay, I'll test this out in a bit. But in theory, yes.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so we migrated. Let's test it out. So there are 3 ways that I know of that we can test out our models. I'm going to try one of them right now. So you can write a test. So in the tests.py, you can actually just create a test that will validate your that everything is running correctly. So you can, I'm gonna import, from .models. Oops. Import locker. Okay, so we have our locker. And then this is how you can create a test. So you can create a class. I'm gonna call it school tests. And it inherits from test case, which is imported automatically into this file. Okay, and here, all you have to do when you're defining test cases is it's looking for test and then a number. So I can say test 01, create locker, wrong combo format. Okay, and this will take self. Because it's a class or like a method within an instance method within this class. So in here, I can just create a new locker. And as we saw yesterday, because these models are basically just classes, so I can just create it using this syntax, and then I send in the information that I need, locker number and combination. So locker number, something, and then combination equals something else. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to enter a valid locker number. So let's say 120. For my combination, I'm going to just enter wrong syntax. So I'm going to enter something in this form. So the validators don't actually run on their own. They don't, like, if I do this, the validators aren't running. So the validators only run when you run new locker dot full clean. So full clean is a built-in method that it actually runs 3 different things. So I just want the reference. Nope, I had it open here. One sec. There we go. Okay, so this full clean does a few things. It validates, it does clean fields, so it runs validation on the specific fields. It does model.clean, which validates the model as a whole. And then it validates uniqueness on its own, and then validates the constraints. So you can actually do these just one by one, but if you run full clean, it'll run all of them and it'll validate your entire model. So if I run this, if it is not correct, I should be getting a validation error. So how can I help? How can I catch that? I'm going to put a try catch, try except, sorry. Except block. Okay, so I'm going to try to do a full clean on this new locker. In the case that it is not correct, which I'm assuming that it won't be correct, I am going to get an exception. So on this line, you can actually specify the type of error that you're looking for. So you can have multiple except blocks looking for different types of errors. So for right now, I want to grab that one validation error. That is going to be from Django dot core dot exceptions import validation error. There we go. So I'm going to accept a validation error, and I'm going to call it E for short. And so if I get here, I can say, since this is a test, I can do self.assert. I'm going to assert true. So if there is an error, which I'm expecting, I would like to assert that I'm going to get an error that says this. Okay, so I'm going to assert that this is in the message that is sent over through here. So I'm going to access that through e.message dictionary. And it's going to be in, I can access it through combination, which is the name of that field. Okay, in theory, this should work. So I'm going to go back here. This is just a school project. I can run Python, manage PyTest, and it ran the test. Seems like everything was okay. Let's say in case this doesn't actually catch an error, I want to do self.fail, so you can fail the test on purpose, just to make sure that, okay, we're not getting an error, which is great. So I want to see, because we're asserting that this is true. So if I say, if I change the error that's being sent over, so let's say combinations, and then I run this again, I got a failure because I did get an exception, but the exception didn't match this. So that means I am getting the exception as I'm expecting. So if I just print this out here, it should print out the actual exception for me, the message. So here, it printed out invalid combinations, which is what I was expecting. And then if I change this again, and I run it, the test will pass, and this is what got sent in. Any questions about this? Just to reiterate, so we created a model that has some attributes, and then these attributes, this combination attribute, I set a validator to validate the locker combination, and this locker combination validator will raise an error, a validation error, if we have the wrong combination. So we can send that in. We can also format this however we want. We can have it an F string, and we can actually say, we can have the combination that was wrong in here as well. And if we print that, so it's going to fail because it's not what we're looking for, but this is, so it's sending that with the error as well. So one way that we can test our models is we can create a test case here, and then we can test it out and see what happens. So let's check what happens if I put like 89 here, because if you guys remember, I put a minimum value validator where I said I wanted anything above 100. So if I run my test, let's see what I got. So I'm actually gonna just comment out the assert. I just wanna print out my error statement just so I can check what's happening. Oh, I don't think I saved it. Okay. There we go. So I got invalid combination format. Oh, because that's what I was testing for. Hold on. So if I do 22, so this is a valid format. So if we test, error, okay, so we got a validation error, but we are looking specifically for a combination validation error because this is what we were raising earlier. But since that's not what failed, it's not really gonna work because you can't access something that's not there. So if I just print out the entire error, this should allow me to see, okay, so I got an error in locker number because I put the wrong here. It says, ensure this value is greater than or equal to 100. So, questions about this?
Did that come from that ensure the value is greater than equal to 100? Does that come from that built-in? Like it just knows since you print each, it's a built-in return state?
Yeah, exactly. So here I'm just looking for a validation error of any kind. Which is why I can only print E. I can't access specifically combination because that's not the error that I received. I got a locker number error instead. So I had uncommented this and was looking for locker number. And I tested. I can access the locker number data point. It's just asserting that it's not true because this is not what we received back, which is cool.
Can you, oh, go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if you could re-explain the use of self.fail.
Yes, so this one is if I gave two correct ones. So let's say 100 and then this one is correct. Full clean is not going to cause an error. So if I get self.fail, it will fail it, but it won't, the error message is not going to be, it's going to be empty pretty much. So let's test it out. Okay, so I ran it. I'm not supposed to get any validation errors, which is good. So here, I got an assertion error and it's none. So because of the self.fail, it went to an assertion error. So this was just an in case something didn't work. I wanted to see that it would fail, but you don't really need this. So full.clean is going to run your validators. Okay. Okay, so we created some validators here. Let's work on our models again. So now we know how we can test a little bit. What other classes did we have, or what other tables did we have? We had, I believe, a student. And this will also inherit from models.model. Okay. And student, I'm gonna copy these over. It's because time's a little short today. Okay. So. Okay. One thing, if you're copying from GitHub, sometimes the indentations are incorrect. Some of them are tabs, and then your interpreter is looking for spaces. So sometimes you have to go back and then just manually like hit enter to get the correct tabs and stuff like that. Okay, so we have first name, last name, birth date, and then we also had a locker that will be assigned to the student. So this locker is, if I'm remembering correctly, we were going to do a one-to-one relationship, right? So how do we define that? So we say models dot one-to-one field. And this is how we can say that this field here is going to be a one-to-one field. The first argument that goes in is the model. So the class name, which is locker here. And then one of the attributes that you have to put in is on delete. So on delete, we'll say what happens when your locker gets deleted. When the thing that you are associating to gets deleted, what will happen to this record? So on delete, if you put how was it? Models.cascade. So cascade, if the locker is deleted, then the student will be deleted as well. If I think restrict won't allow you to delete a locker because it is attached to a student. And then there's a few others. Models.cascade. So there's cascade, there is protect, restrict, set null. So if you delete a locker, set this locker attribute to null. I think that would be good. Let's do set null. Okay. And the third thing that we will add is a related name. So what this related name will do is it will create kind of an imaginary field over here. So if I call this student, it will create an imaginary field here that allows you to access the student that is attached to this locker, if it exists. So related name is, how can I access this connection from the other class? So student has a locker, so I could say student.locker and I have access to that information. But if I'm at the locker, because of this line, because of this related names, actually, because of this one-to-one field thing, I can access the students through locker. If you don't have this related name, I believe you can access it through, let's say we have a locker called L dot student set, I believe. All. I do have to look up the syntax, but I think it's the name of whatever the field is, or the model is, underscore set, and that will be the relation backwards. Even if you didn't specify it here, this line creates that connection, and you're able to access things from both ways, which is pretty powerful in a lot of situations. For this locker, because all of the fields naturally are not null by default, so I want to allow this one to be null. So I'm going to set null to true, and that's it. Okay, I don't want it to be blank. Any questions about this? No. Okay. I'm going to add dunder methods for these, just because it's going to be easier to print them out later.
Zainab, I actually did have a question on this.
Yeah.
So that related name, is that creating like a field in locker then?
Yes. So regardless, there's so it's not really creating a field in the table, but Django does some weird stuff, some magic that allows that relationship to go back. So you can effectively, it is another field. So you can use it like that.
Okay, so you could like make a query based on that magical field.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying. I don't think it's actual magic. I think I have to look into exactly how it attaches it, but you can access locker.student to figure out which student is attached to that locker. Yeah. Okay, so I just added dunder methods. I didn't do much. Okay, so let's explore our next relationship. So we're going to create a class professor. And this will inherit from the same models.model. I'm going to grab the professor's information from here. Okay, so it's just a first name, last name, and start date. So start date is a date field, and then under method. There's nothing really special about the professor at the moment. So just this information. So we are going to create another class for the courses. So course. Okay, so we're going to create the courses. We have our name, description. Let me grab this. So course name, course description. We also have credits. One sec. So these credits, for credits, I want to put 2 validators on there. So I want the minimum value to be 1 and then the maximum value to be 6. I have not imported these, so I have imported all the validators as V, so I can just say V dot and V dot over here, and this will add these restrictions onto this credits field. Okay, so now we have a professor. So this course can only have 1 professor, but professors will have many courses, or can have multiple courses. So this is the one-to-many relationship. Since course will have the 1 professor, we'll put professor in here. We'll put the foreign key relationships over here. So to access the foreign key, make this a foreign key field, models.foreign key. And then we set up some information. So similar to the one-to-one fields, all we have to do is send in the name of our connected class or our connected table. So professor. And then we have to set our on delete. So if a professor gets deleted, should we delete a course? Probably. I would say the on delete here can be models.cascade. Okay. And I'm also going to add a related names. And this is going to be courses. So this related name, again, is going to be a name that shows up over here in the professor. So when you're choosing it, you have to kind of make it make sense. So the course has a professor, but based on this connection, a professor will have courses. And you see how I added multiple because this will be minimum 1 can be multiple courses. So when I want to access the courses, I can say the professor dot courses, and I will get access to that. Okay. Okay, so I created that. I'm gonna add. Just gonna copy this. Oops. Okay. This one is for course and then self.name. Okay. So I created my course. So our last relationship was going to be students and courses, right? This one was the one that ended up being our many-to-many relationship. So there's 2 ways to do this. This depends on whether you want to add any specific enrollment fields. So if this join table that we want is purely to connect students to courses, we can do this. So in the enrollments field that we were talking about on Friday, that one we added a grade. So we're saying that we don't want to keep any information about a grade. All I care about is the connection between a course and a student. So on this course here, I can say the course has students. And this one will be a many-to-many field. So this many-to-many field will be attached to the class student because that is what I want to attach to this course. And for my second argument, it's something called through. And this will, actually, we haven't created enrollments. I think we can just do this. One moment. Okay. Yeah, you can just put many-to-many field like this. Okay. So if I only wanted our connection to be like this, so we don't want any extra information, you can just say that our many-to-many field is connected to students, and we can probably have I believe I can set a related name here. And this will create whatever courses, or yeah. Related name equals courses. So this means that students will now have access to courses. So courses over here. And also professor will have courses based on this foreign key over here. So because of this, we can actually put this many-to-many field either in the course or in the student. It just depends which one goes first. So because I had student up here, and I need to use that model, I would just, I'm just going to put student in course. But if I had defined my courses above my students, I can put the courses in the student. Okay, so this is one way of doing this. But let's say I did actually want to have like an external join table because I wanted to add the grade. So let's comment this out for a sec. So I'm going to create a class enrollments.
Hey, Zainab.
Uh-huh.
Hey, on the previous way on line 37,
Mhm.
does that create like a list, or what's the back of that look like? Like, does it just append a bunch of students in a list, or?
It will be equivalent to, you know, when you're doing your queries and you do like student dot objects dot all. So these, or like this one, this will be equivalent to student dot objects, but it's specific to those objects that are in here. So you can access stuff in it through the dot all or dot filter, or you can do dot all dot filter. So that's how you query it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it is a list, but it's not a list. It's like a query. It's a query set, and then you have to do the dot all to get the actual list of objects.
I have a question about the dot all actually.
Uh-huh.
Yesterday, when we were doing all those queries, the first one, in order to get a list of everything, you needed dot all. And then I had gotten like a few into it and I wasn't doing dot all anymore after the first one. And Megan was like explaining something to me and she was like, don't you need dot all? And because you're doing the entire list. And I was like, well, I haven't been doing it and it was still going through all of the students. So can you explain why that was working like that?
I would have to see, what did you say the command was?
Basically you had it like student.objects. But instead of .all.filter, I just did .filter and it still passed all the tests.
Yeah, that should work then. It's because it's still a query set, so I believe both of them, like both commands would work. So you can use both.
Okay.
I believe so. We'll test it out in a bit.
Gotcha.
Remind me. Okay, so we're going to create an enrollments class, and this will hold information for a student and for a course, and then also a grade. So I'm just going to grab some information here. Okay. So my student is going to be a foreign key. Okay. My student is going to be a foreign key because I want to be able to have multiple students. So I'm setting the student, I'm setting the on delete, and then I'm going to have an enrollments related name. So in students, I will have access to this enrollment record. I'm going to do the same with course. So I can have multiple courses because of this foreign key. Setting the on delete, related name. And then for grade, I just want that to be a regular char field. I'm going to add a validator that validates that I have a letter and with an optional plus or minus. So the question mark makes this optional. And then this one just defines what are your possibilities for this for that first index. So this, oops, b.regex validator. Okay, so if you guys remember with the enrollments, we needed to set these two to be unique, or the combination of the student and course to be unique in the enrollment table. So previously, when we were writing SQL, we did we set the unique constraint, so like unique, and then we put the student and then the course in here. So we're going to do something a little similar. Django models have this thing called a meta class. So this meta class, it's going to specifically look for a class called meta. So if you don't have one, it's fine. But if you want to put specific information about this, this model, it will be in here. And then it will also look for something called unique together. And what this constraint will set, will do is set a unique constraint on whatever we send in. So we have to do a nested, we have to do a tuple within this within these parentheses, and we just put student and also course. So what this is saying is I want the student course combination to be unique. And then I'm going to do this. Okay. Okay, it seems like we have built our entire enrollment. So our courses here, we have an enrollments, field now in our courses, right? But let's say we want a specific list of students. So we can grab this list of students through our enrollments table. So the way to do that is student equals models dot many to many, oops, many to many field, and this will be a type student, and this is where our through works. So through enrollment. So this is going to be just an easier way for us to grab students. Instead of going through the enrollment to the student, we can just have a list of students directly in here. So we can set this student's attribute as a many-to-many field. And it will know where to grab it based on the enrollments table. So we have already defined the enrollments table and how the course and the student interact. So this one will just allow us to have a list of students directly in our course model, which is different than having an enrollment, right? An enrollment record, because the enrollment has the grade and then it has student and course. So if you want to loop through that and look through all of the enrollments, it'll be more cumbersome to find a student versus just accessing it through the student list. Questions? I know this was a lot, but Michael, so we aren't calling the classes from anywhere right now, because we have not imported them and we aren't using any views. So we're going to take a little break, and then after the break, we'll see how we can actually play around with these without having to populate our views and calling like an HTTP request and sending data and stuff like that. So we can just test these out in a way, and I'll show you guys how. Questions?
I actually had
Just
one
one
earlier.
For it.
With constraints versus validators, is that just two different syntaxes to describe the exact same thing, or is there actually a difference between them?
Validators enforce constraints. So
Okay.
yeah, so constraints are like unique and not null or something like that. The validators are kind of related to it, so they will enforce constraints. So inside of a validator, you're basically setting a specific constraint and you're checking for that. Yeah, so they're kind of just interrelated.
Okay.
Okay, we went through a lot. Can we
Mhm.
just be told what locker does one more time? Just locker? Just
Locker?
from the start to the end? Yeah.
Yeah. How about we take a little break and then we'll like kind of refresh
Okay.
ourselves, and then I'll go over it again and we'll test it out. Yeah, okay. Let me stop recording.